It was a warm Saturday afternoon when Monica, a young black woman in her late 20s, walked into the Silver Fork Diner, a popular restaurant in a small southern town. She had just come from a long day of job interviews and wanted nothing more than a good meal and a quiet place to rest her thoughts. She wore a neat white blouse, dark jeans, and a soft smile, the kind of person who carried dignity effortlessly. The moment she stepped inside, however, the mood shifted. The chatter in the diner softened. A few customers glanced her way, and one or two whispered something under their breath. Monica ignored it and politely approached the counter where the owner, Rick Saunders, stood, a middle-aged white man with slicked back hair, a gold watch, and the kind of smirk that made you uneasy. "Hi there," Monica said warmly. "Table for one, please." Rick didn't look up right away. He wiped the counter with exaggerated slowness, then finally met her gaze. "We're full," he said flatly. Monica looked around. Half the tables were empty. "Oh," she said, keeping her tone gentle. "I can wait, if that's okay." Rick chuckled. "We don't serve your kind here," he said loud enough for a few nearby customers to hear. "There's a fast food place down the street, maybe that's more your kind of place." The words hit Monica like a slap, but she didn't react with anger. Instead, she took a slow breath, straightened her posture, and said calmly, "You know, that's disappointing to hear in 2025. Rick shrugged. "You can call it whatever you want, lady. I run this place how I see fit." A few people laughed awkwardly. Others looked away, uncomfortable but silent. Monica nodded once, as if memorizing every detail of his face, then turned and walked out of the diner, but not before pulling out her phone. 3 minutes later, Rick's day took a sharp turn. As Monica sat in her car, she uploaded a short video to her social media. She had recorded just enough of the conversation to capture his hateful words. Her caption was simple: "This is what happened when I tried to eat at the Silver Fork Diner today. It's 2025, and this is still how some people treat others." Within minutes, the post started spreading. Monica, as it turned out, wasn't just anyone. She was a local journalist and community activist with a large following. Inside the diner, Rick was pouring coffee for a customer when his phone started buzzing. Then the restaurant phone rang. Then it rang again. And again. Customers began checking their phones too, murmuring, whispering, showing each other the video. "Hey Rick," one of the waitresses said nervously, holding up her phone. "You're all over social media right now." "What are you talking about?" he snapped. She turned the screen toward him. The video was already at 50,000 views and climbing fast. His own voice echoed from the phone, "We don't serve your kind here." Rick's face went pale. "Turn that off," he barked, but the damage was done. People began leaving their tables. Some didn't even ask for refunds. "I can't eat here after hearing that," one man said. Another woman muttered, "My son's mixed, you disgust me," before storming out. Within minutes, the once busy diner was nearly empty. Outside, a few people had already gathered, filming, taking pictures of the front door. Rick's Yelp page started filling with one-star reviews. A local reporter called asking for a statement. "Sir," the waitress said quietly, holding back tears, "I quit. My grandmother's black. I can't work for someone like you." She took off her apron and left. Rick stood behind the counter, breathing heavily, watching everything fall apart in real time. Then, as if karma wanted to make sure the lesson hit home, a black SUV pulled into the lot. Out stepped a man in a dark suit, Mr. Harrison, the town's health and business inspector. Rick's heart sank. "Afternoon," Harrison said calmly. "We received multiple complaints just now. Thought I'd stop by." He looked around the nearly empty diner, glanced at the grimy floors, and noticed a few safety violations that had gone unchecked. "Looks like we'll need to conduct an inspection today." Rick tried to explain, to stammer out an excuse, but Harrison cut him off. "Save it. I saw the video." By the time the inspector left, the Silver Fork Diner was officially temporarily closed pending review. A notice was taped to the door. Rick stood there in silence, his reflection in the glass, tired, angry, and suddenly very small. Across the street, Monica sat in her car, watching quietly. She didn't smile or gloat. She simply whispered, "People deserve respect, Rick. Always." As she drove away, the sun broke through the clouds, lighting up the diner's faded sign. The once proud Silver Fork shimmered for a brief second, then flickered out, like a light bulb that had burned too long. That day, the town learned a powerful lesson. Racism might think it can hide behind doors, counters, and fake smiles, but the truth always finds its way out. And when it does, karma is never late. 2 weeks had passed since the Silver Fork Diner shut down. The once bustling restaurant now sat behind faded yellow tape and a large red notice on the door, "Closed pending investigation." Dust gathered on the windows, and the sign that had once glowed proudly now hung crooked, half the bulbs dead. Inside, the place was silent. The smell of old grease lingered, and the only sound was the creak of the front door as Rick Saunders walked in, his keys jingling softly. He looked around at what used to be his pride and joy, a place he'd built from the ground up 15 years ago. Now it was gone, ruined, and in his mind, all because of that woman, he muttered bitterly, 3 minutes. That's all it took for my life to fall apart. He didn't understand, or maybe he refused to. To him, Monica was still the problem. He had received hundreds of angry emails, thousands of hate messages, and more than a few threats. His bank account was shrinking fast, suppliers had cancelled contracts, and even his longtime employees had turned their backs on him. That morning, Rick sat at one of the empty tables, scrolling through his phone. The video had now reached over 10 million views. The headline from a local paper read, "Local diner shut down after racist outburst, woman's dignity sparks nationwide conversation." And right beneath it, there was a picture of Monica, smiling as she stood beside the mayor at a community food drive. Rick frowned. "She's milking it," he muttered. Playing the victim. But the truth was, Monica hadn't said a single negative word about him since that day. She didn't go on talk shows. She didn't post rants. Instead, she used the attention to start something positive, a charity program that helped minority-owned small businesses in the area. It was called Second Table, based on the idea that everyone deserves a seat somewhere. Her calmness and grace only made Rick's bitterness deeper. That night, as he sat alone in the dark diner, he heard the door creak open again. He startled, but it was only Martha, his former waitress, the one who'd quit the day of the scandal. She held a cardboard box in her hands. "I came to get the last of my stuff," she said quietly. Rick nodded, looking embarrassed. "Yeah. Go ahead." As she gathered her belongings, she glanced at him and sighed. "You know, Rick, you weren't always like this." Rick looked up sharply. "Excuse me?" "When I started working here," she said, setting down the box, "you treated everyone the same. You gave free pie to the homeless guy who came in every Friday. You helped the new cook learn English. What happened to that man?" Rick's mouth opened, but no words came out. Martha continued, "I think somewhere along the line, you let hate replace your pride. And it burned your whole life down." She walked out, leaving Rick sitting there, her words echoing louder than any insult he'd ever received online. Later that week, Rick received a letter in the mail. The envelope was plain, no return address. Inside was a small card that read, "Forgiveness is not a gift you give others. It's one you give yourself. M." He knew exactly who it was from. At first, he laughed bitterly. "Forgiveness? She destroyed me." But the more he stared at the handwriting, the more something inside him cracked, not anger this time, but something closer to shame. That night, he opened his laptop and searched for Monica's name. He found an announcement, Second Table Community Kitchen, grand opening next Saturday. Against every instinct, Rick decided to go. When he arrived that weekend, the place was full of laughter, light, and the smell of fresh food. Volunteers in aprons served hot meals to families in need. Kids played in the corner, and local musicians filled the air with gentle music, and there she was, of Monica, smiling as she served food, talking kindly to everyone, as if nothing bad had ever happened to her. Rick stood at the edge of the crowd, nervous, awkward, out of place. When she finally noticed him, her expression softened, not angry, not smug, just calm. He stepped forward slowly. "Monica." You don't have to," she interrupted gently. "I already forgave you." He blinked, stunned. "Why?" She smiled faintly. "Because hate destroys both sides. I wasn't going to let it take me too." For the first time in weeks, Rick felt something shift inside him. His throat tightened, his eyes wet. He swallowed hard. "I lost everything," he admitted quietly. "My business, my reputation, everything." Monica nodded. "Then maybe it's time to build something new, something better." She gestured toward the tables where people were eating. "We could use volunteers if you're serious about making things right." Rick hesitated, pride and guilt wrestling inside him, but finally, he nodded. "Yeah. I'll help." That day, for the first time, Rick served food to people without judgment. He said thank you, please, and take care, words that had once felt meaningless now carried weight. And though most people recognized him, Monica's presence beside him seemed to calm the whispers. Weeks later, Rick became a regular volunteer. He never asked for forgiveness again. He earned it through his actions. In time, the Silver Fork Diner building was sold, not to another restaurant chain, but to Monica's Second Table Foundation. They turned it into a community kitchen, painted bright yellow, with a new sign above the door that read, and every Saturday morning, as sunlight poured through the windows, you could see Rick in an apron, serving breakfast with a quiet smile. A man who once spread hate, now learning the power of kindness. Karma had taken everything from him, but compassion gave him something far greater, redemption. A full year had passed since the Silver Fork Diner became the Second Table Community Kitchen. What was once a place of division and humiliation had turned into a symbol of unity and second chances. Every morning, the smell of pancakes, coffee, and laughter filled the air. The walls, once dull and peeling, were now painted bright yellow and covered with photos, smiling families, volunteers, and newspaper clippings that told the story of how one act of hate became the spark for change. Rick Saunders worked there nearly every day. He no longer wore his gold watch or slicked his hair back. Instead, he wore a plain apron with the second table logo stitched on the front. The man who once turned people away now welcomed everyone with a warm, humbled smile. Sometimes, people still recognized him. They'd stare for a moment, whisper, and then ask, "You're the guy from that video, aren't you?" Rick never denied it. He would simply nod and say, "Yes, I was. But I'm trying to be someone better now." And somehow, that honesty disarmed them. Some shook his hand. Others forgave him quietly. A few even joined him as volunteers. Across the kitchen, Monica watched all this unfold every day. She had become somewhat of a local hero, though she never liked being called that. To her, the real victory wasn't the viral fame or the donations, it was seeing hearts change, one meal at a time. One afternoon, the town's mayor came by to give Second Table an award for outstanding community impact. The small crowd clapped as Monica and Rick stood side by side to accept it. Cameras flashed, but Rick's hands trembled slightly. He still wasn't used to being seen in a positive light. Monica leaned over and whispered, "You earned this. Don't hide from it." Rick nodded, his eyes misting over. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he said quietly. She smiled. "Everyone deserves a second table, Rick, even you." The applause faded, and the mayor stepped forward. "This kitchen has not only served over 10,000 meals in 1 year," he said proudly, "but it has also shown that forgiveness and growth can heal even the deepest wounds." Because of what started here, similar kitchens have opened in 4 other towns across the state. Rick's jaw dropped. "Wait, 4? Monica nodded. "We used your old business plan to design the model. It's working. People everywhere are getting involved." For the first time in a long while, Rick laughed, a genuine, full laugh that filled the room. "So, the guy who ran a racist diner accidentally helped start a charity?" Monica chuckled softly. "Looks like karma came full circle, doesn't it?" Months later, the Second Table Foundation had expanded across the region. News outlets ran stories with headlines like "Former racist restaurant owner now feeds thousands" and "From hate to hope, the man who changed his ways." One evening, after a long day of serving dinner, Rick sat outside on the restaurant steps as the sun went down. Monica joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. They sat in silence for a while, watching the golden light fade into the horizon. "You ever think about that day?" she asked softly. "All the time," Rick admitted. "It's the worst thing I ever did, but it led me here. Doesn't mean I'm proud of it, just that I learned from it." Monica nodded. "That's what matters. The world doesn't need perfect people, Rick. It needs people willing to change." He looked at her, the woman he once humiliated, now his closest friend and the reason he was still standing. "You saved me," he said quietly. She shook her head. "You saved yourself. I just showed you the door." As the first stars appeared, laughter echoed from inside, the volunteers cleaning up, families thanking them, kids running around with leftover cookies. The warmth of it all felt almost unreal, like the world had finally found balance again. Years later, when Second Table became a national foundation, with branches in 20 cities, Rick continued to work quietly behind the scenes. He never sought fame or attention. Whenever someone asked why he did it, he always gave the same simple answer: "Because once, I closed my doors to someone who needed kindness. I'll never do that again." And so, the man who once symbolized hate became the proof that redemption is real, that no matter how deep the mistake, there is always a way back if you're brave enough to face yourself. At the entrance of the original community kitchen, a plaque still hangs. It reads, "This place once turned a woman away. Now, it welcomes everyone." Let this be a reminder that change begins with humility, and kindness is the only lasting legacy. Every person who walks through those doors, whether rich or poor, young or old, black or white, sees it and smiles, because they know the story. And somewhere in that warm, bustling kitchen, Rick Saunders still greets every guest the same way: "Welcome. You always have a seat here." 5 years had passed since the day Rick Saunders told Monica, "We don't serve your kind here." 5 years since the world had watched a hateful moment turn into one of the most powerful redemption stories of the decade. Why now? The Second Table Foundation had spread across the entire country. From small towns to major cities, bright yellow kitchens with the sign "Everyone deserves a seat" stood proudly on every corner of America. Each one served free meals, offered job training, and welcomed anyone, no judgment, no questions asked, and though the foundation was famous, its founders remained humble. Monica led the national program, while Rick quietly managed the training for new volunteers. He never once appeared in interviews or documentaries, not because he was ashamed anymore, but because he believed his actions should speak louder than his words. But fate, as always, had other plans. One evening, Monica received a call from a major TV network, the Human Spirit Hour, a primetime show known for uplifting stories. The producer wanted to air a segment called From Hate to Hope, featuring both Monica and Rick. At first, Rick refused. "I'm not the kind of person people want to see on TV," he said. "They'll just remember the man I was." Monica smiled softly. "That's exactly why you should do it. People need to see who you are now." After a long pause, Rick agreed. "Okay. But only if we tell the truth, all of it." The day of the broadcast arrived. The studio lights were bright, cameras everywhere, and a live audience filled the room. On stage, 2 chairs faced each other, one for Monica, one for Rick. The host, a kind-faced woman named Samantha Voss, introduced them. "Tonight," she began, "we share a story that started with hate but ended with hope. Please welcome Monica Hayes and Rick Saunders, the founders of the Second Table Foundation." The audience erupted in applause. Monica smiled gracefully. Rick, nervous but steady, took a deep breath and sat down. Samantha began gently. "Rick, millions of people saw the video of that day. Many hated you for what you said. What do you want to say to them now?" Rick leaned forward, hands clasped, voice quiet but firm. "They had every right to hate me. What I said to Monica was wrong. There's no excuse for it. I grew up thinking pride meant power, that admitting you were wrong made you weak. But it's the opposite. Humility is the strongest thing I've ever learned." The audience was silent, listening intently. He continued, "When my restaurant closed, I blamed everyone but myself. But Monica, she didn't destroy me. She saved me. She gave me a second chance, and because of that, I found my humanity again." Monica's eyes glistened as he spoke. Samantha turned to her. "Monica, why did you forgive him?" Monica looked at Rick, then back at the audience. "Because forgiveness is a choice, not for the person who hurt you, but for yourself. Hate chains you to the past. Forgiveness lets you walk free. I didn't forgive Rick because he deserved it. I forgave him because I refused to carry his hate inside me." The audience stood and applauded. Some wiped tears from their eyes. Rick looked overwhelmed. "You changed me," he said quietly. Monica smiled. "No, Rick. You decided to change. I just believed you could." The show ended with a short film showing second table kitchens around the country, volunteers laughing, serving food, hugging strangers. The final shot showed the plaque outside the first kitchen. "This place once turned a woman away. Now it welcomes everyone." The episode aired nationwide and went viral overnight. Millions watched, shared, and cried. News anchors called it the most powerful story of redemption ever broadcast. Celebrities donated. Churches, schools, and companies began starting second table days to give free meals to their communities. Even people who once mocked or doubted Rick began writing letters. Some said, "You gave me hope that I can change too." Others shared their own stories of prejudice, regret, and forgiveness. Months later, Rick received an invitation to speak at the United Nations Global Humanity Summit. He was hesitant, but Monica convinced him to go. When he walked on that stage in front of world leaders, his speech was simple, only a few sentences long. 5 years ago, I thought skin color made us different. Today, I know kindness is what makes us human. I learned that redemption isn't about forgetting the past, it's about facing it, owning it, and building something better from it. I can't erase what I did, but I can feed people now, and in every meal, I find forgiveness. The room erupted in applause. Some even stood. Cameras flashed as Monica joined him on stage, and together they raised their hands, not in pride, but in gratitude. Back home, the Second Table Foundation grew beyond anything either of them imagined. International branches opened in London, Cape Town, and Rio. Volunteers wore yellow aprons marked with 3 simple words: "Everyone deserves respect." And though the world changed around them, one thing never did. Every Sunday morning, Rick still showed up at the original kitchen, put on his old apron, and served breakfast with that same quiet smile. He never spoke about the fame or the awards. He never boasted about being forgiven. All he ever said, to anyone who came through those doors, was this: "Welcome. Sit down. Your family here." As time went on, people stopped calling him the racist diner guy. They called him Rick, the man who changed, and that, perhaps, was karma's greatest gift, not punishment, but transformation, because sometimes, the most powerful story isn't about revenge, it's about redemption, and the courage to become someone better than you were yesterday.